Kalina, who is a candidate for, I believe it's Southern School District. She is ill, so she wasn't able to make it. But I do have our other guest, our other scheduled guest, George Scott, and George is a candidate for the 4th District Congress. That is the seat that is presently occupied by Scott Perry. So because George has to leave early, he has another commitment, I'm going to just let him introduce himself, talk a little bit about his platform and the issues that are most important to him, and just let him introduce himself to the community and let the community get to know him. So, George Scott, welcome.
Thank you.
You're running for candidate of the 4th District Congress.
Correct. Yeah, I'm a Democratic candidate for the 4th Congressional District, and this is my very first time running for office. And so part of what I'm trying to do now is to let folks know why I'm running, but also who I am, because I think that's a basic question that folks might have about someone, particularly who hasn't run for office before. So I would usually start by saying that I'm a person who considers this district my home. So I grew up in Adams County on a farm. I learned a lot about hard work. My dad was a farmer for 30 years, and for 30 years before that, he was an Army officer. And then I went to public schools over there, and after graduating from public school, I headed off to college. And I went down and ended up graduating from Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., with a degree in international relations. And I've always been interested in serving, and also very interested in our government. And so I proceeded straight into the military and began a 20-year career in the military as an Army officer. And then after, but throughout that 20 years of being in the Army, even though I was on active duty, this was still the place that I considered home, the place that I came home to regularly. And in the military, it was what you would call my home of record, which means your home of record is the place that if you ever die in service to our nation, it's a place that your remains come back to. So I served for 20 years and got to do a lot of wonderful things during that time period, but came back to the district in 2009 and have lived here with my kids up in York County since that time. And so, again, the first and foremost thing is that this district is my home. It's been that way for a long time, and I care not only about the district but about all the people that live in it. So that's the first thing that I try and share with folks. The second thing that I try to share with people is that, as I said, I'm not a career politician. So I'm going through a steep learning curve, as anybody might with this type of adventure. But I am somebody who spent my life in service. And as I mentioned, I served 20 years on active duty and was very proud to do that. That service allowed me to do a lot of exciting things. So I got to spend time on the Korean demilitarized zone as a young officer leading a radar platoon. I took, as a company commander, took my troops down to Panama during the invasion of Panama in 1989. I spent 4 years in the Middle East over various points in my career, serving in a variety of positions in a variety of locations. I commanded a battalion of over 1,800 soldiers involved in training them to be ready for the operations that we face today. And basically, throughout those 20 years, I planned and coordinated and integrated intelligence and operations at every possible level, all the way from platoon all the way on up to Army level. But it was a wonderful career, but at some point everybody takes off the uniform, and so I did. I took the uniform off, but that didn't bring an end to my service. I went straight to work for the federal government and worked for the Central Intelligence Agency for about a year and a half as a staff operations officer. And then after that, I went to work in the private sector. But I didn't want to simply sit at a desk. I wanted to be out and doing something that would help others. So I immediately went to Iraq and worked there as a program manager with an organization called the Counterinsurgency Center for Excellence. And our mission was essentially to help units who were coming in, help their leaders learn what were the most important things going on within Iraq at that time, what were the things that were working, that were keeping our troops alive and helping them succeed in their mission. So I did that and then came home after that to work in the counter-IED effort. IEDs are improvised explosive devices. There's the homemade bombs that enemy forces have used in both Iraq in Afghanistan against our forces. And so I spent several years involved in that effort, trying to figure out ways to defeat and neutralize those systems. But then the Lord decided to call me into something else. And so about 8 years ago, I was called into serving in ministry. And that's what I've spent my last 8 years right here in South Central Pennsylvania. And went to a seminary over in Gettysburg and serve now at a church, a Lutheran church, over in East Berlin, and that's a blessing. I get to be with people and hear about their lives and hear about the challenges they face in their lives every day, and it's a wonderful way to serve. It's unlike any service that I've ever done before. The third thing that I think I try and emphasize to folks is I'm a person of integrity and compassion, and what that means is that if I say I'm going to do something, then I will do everything that I can to do it. And I'm a person of compassion, which means that I really care about people. And particularly being in ministry, it really opens your eyes to the needs that people face, the challenges that they face. And so I'm committed to serving and representing all the people of the district and not just those who happen to be rich or powerful or well-placed. I think that our elected leaders have to serve the entire people of the district. So that's just a little bit about who I am.
Well, you definitely have an interesting background.
Yes.
And it should serve you well because, first of all, I should say thank you so much for your service. And, our service men and women really need help. That is a big, big issue. They do not get the support that they need. Right. There are many that are mentally ill. There are many that are on the streets homeless because they've served their country, but they come back and the country isn't exactly serving them.
That's true.
So I'm very happy to hear that you have a background that could lend to understanding and helping maybe put policy in place or tweaking policy to help all those brave men and women out there who have served and need that extra support now.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly something that I as a veteran am very attuned to. But what I would say is one of the advantages of having folks who have served run for political office is there's a certain mindset that you bring to things. And that mindset is essentially, I want to work with people who will work together to get the job done. And, when you're in uniform, you don't care about what someone's political party is, what their religion is, what their ethnicity or their gender is. You just want to know that they're going to work together with you and you're all going to try and get the job done, get the mission done. I think that's really what's missing, particularly in our federal government today. And I think what you see with a lot of veterans is that they served and sacrificed because they love their nation, and they not only want what's best for them, but they want what's best for the nation, and they want to see the kinds of programs and policies that will support people from all walks of life, and that's certainly what I'm about as well. And really, for me, the whole motivation, running for office is never something that I plan to do. I thought about it, I confess, a little bit in my 20s. I actually got to serve on a congressional internship in college for Congressman Goodling, which was a wonderful experience. But I kind of let go of that. But in the past couple of years, I think I, like a lot of other folks, have gotten to the point where I recognize that our federal government is not functioning the way it's supposed to. It's become increasingly dysfunctional and just it's stuck in gridlock. And we've got to get leaders in there that can somehow get beyond that, leaders who will put principles above partisanship, and leaders who will actually pursue solutions rather than just talking about solutions. And so that means that we've got to elect people who are willing to work not only within their own party, but they've got to be willing to reach across the aisle, find common ground. One party pursuing a solution, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, is not the way that our government was intended to run. And we are stuck in that, and that's why we can't seem to get anything done. And the policies that we do come up with sometimes don't really serve the interests of the people that we've been elected to serve. So.
Yeah, I just want to add one quick thing because I think it's important, and I say this a lot on the show, and I'm going to keep saying it to people. It sticks in their minds that, okay, there's good and bad in everything. There are good Republicans, there are bad Republicans. There are good Democrats, there are bad Democrats. There are good progressives, there are bad progressives. And I think we need to stop stereotyping and putting people in these rigid little boxes that this is what a Republican should be or this is what a Democrat should be. I hear Democrats say a lot, don't like Republicans. All Republicans are the same. I hear Republicans say, oh, there's liberal Democrats. And I hear progressives say, I don't like either one of them. And I don't see how that's conducive to us working together.
Right.
And you know, one of the things that I like to tell this story because over the summer I was lucky enough to go to Harrisburg as an advocate for dental care. And one of the where we had our little base at the Capitol at Harrisburg that day was a Republican representative's office. And this man he was wonderful. He was just very compassionate, very moderate, really nice person. And the one thing that he loved to show was the little mug that he had gotten from his fellow Republicans that said, "World's Worst Republican." Because he is such a moderate, compassionate, kind of liberal person,
Right.
but he's a Republican.
Right.
So I think I like to use that example to demonstrate that, you know, we really have to kind of get away from these rigid definitions of the parties and look at the person and look at who's actually running and look at, you know, what are they doing and what do they want to do and how are they going to accomplish that. So that's just my little 2 cents that I wanted to throw in there, George, and I'll let you go on with your platform because.
Well, I think to pick up on your point, I think that's really important because one of the things that convinced me to run was talking to people, not who were just Democrats, but also to people who were independents and Republicans. And what I heard was exactly what you hit on, that they're tired of this labeling and almost this demonization of the other. And we've got to get past that. People want leaders representing them who will work for them, and they're less concerned with party labels, your average voter, I think, right now, than they are with, is this a person that I can trust? Is this a person that will actually care about me and will work on my behalf? And so that's why I think, even though this district has traditionally been Republican, I think it's ready for the right kind of leader, and I hope that I can convince people that I am that kind of leader. And so what I'm focused on are, in terms of my platform, are issues that I think affect every single person within this district. And so the three primary issues would be the issue of healthcare and education and jobs. And so healthcare is the one that obviously we've spent a lot of time and effort on as a nation in recent years. And what we see with healthcare is that we have wonderful doctors, wonderful hospitals, great technology, and yet everyone admits that our healthcare system is not necessarily functioning as well as it should be. And so for me, on a daily basis or a weekly basis, I will meet people who cannot get access to the kind of healthcare that they would like to have, or they can't afford the kind of healthcare that they need. And so while I think the Affordable Care Act has improved things greatly, there is still additional ground that needs to be covered, and we need to come up with bipartisan solutions that will advance that. Because when people can't get to their health care or they can't afford the health care, then their freedom is really restricted. And so when I'm elected, my promise is that I will pursue health care that is both affordable and accessible for all Americans. And that doesn't pin down to a specific policy or program. That's the end state, the objective, and then we need to figure out ways to move towards that. The second main part of the program is jobs. People are working, I'm convinced, harder than they ever have. A lot of people are working 2 jobs or a job and a half. When I was a kid, it was common that you might have one wage earner in the household who worked full-time, and then others maybe either didn't work at all or they worked part-time. Now, as a family, in order to survive and thrive, you really almost have to have 2 adults working full-time. And even then, it can be a struggle. We have people that come in and they need food aid, because both of them are working full-time, but they still don't make enough income. And so when someone can't pay their bills, when someone can't save enough money to raise a family, they're not really free to live the kind of life that's intended in our nation. And so my platform, my promise as elected official, will be to pursue jobs that will provide quality training for workers that will give them the skills to get jobs that will pay them the kind of wages that they need to be able to live off of, and not just minimum wage jobs. We need to look seriously at minimum wage and what we can do about that. But just raising the minimum wage won't be enough by itself. We've got to work hard on creating jobs that people really not only want to do, but that will provide them with an income so that they can live the lives that they deserve. And then the third major issue is education. I went to public schools, as I said, and learned a lot about the value of a good education, and then went to college. And fortunately, at that time, I didn't graduate with that much debt. But what I've seen over and over through the years is a lot of people who can't achieve what they want in life, and the reason they can't achieve it is because they don't have the kind of education that they need. Maybe it was they went to a public education program and they didn't really get the skills they needed. Again, it's not the fault of our teachers. It's a resourcing and organizing more than anything else. Or maybe they went to a public education system, but then when they went to college, they came out of that burdened by college debt. I routinely meet people who have $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of college debt. It takes them decades to pay it off, and it restricts their life. And so when either of those things are in effect, people really are not free to live the kind of lives that they deserve to live. And so once I'm elected, my pledge will be to work to support the strongest possible public education programs that we can have, and also to lift this burden of this crippling student debt off the backs of people who have gone to college. So those are the big three. Of course, there are a lot more issues out there.
Yes.
And so a big part of what I'm doing right now is it's kind of a listening phase, going around and listening to voters, trying to find out what's important to them, and then take those issues into consideration. But I think healthcare, jobs, and education are issues that affect every single person in this district in one way or another.
Yeah, I agree with you. There are three biggies. And I'm thinking of all these questions that I would ask you if time permitted, but we want to be mindful of your time. We are actually coming up on, we are at 5:47.
Okay.
So do you want to wrap this up so we can get you out of here and you can get your commitment?
Sure.
Meet your commitment?
Sure, that would be great. That'd be
Okay.
great. Did you have anything in particular that you want to ask me before I feel like I at least owe you a chance for a question or two.
I have a couple of questions, but I'm
Sure.
afraid that they would take a bit time to answer. One of the things that I would like to see on someone's platform is addressing the issue of SSI disability.
Okay.
And the fact that individuals that are on, and I'm on disability,
Okay.
the fact that it makes you very, very, okay, people that have a disability need some support, but many people could also work.
Right.
However, the system is set up that it really prevents people from going and getting a job.
Okay.
Because when they get a job, they have to give so much money back. It's like for every dollar they earn, they have to give $2 back to the disability.
So there's a disincentive to work.
It's a disincentive to work. They will cut their benefits off. So, and the reason why people become functional is because they have their medication, because they have these resources. It really doesn't make sense to, okay, now you have a job, bye.
Right.
There should be some kind of transition. I would love to see a candidate address that issue in some aspect.
Well, thank you for bringing that to my attention. That's not one that I've heard of before, but I can see what you're saying. It's we certainly want to have support in place for people who are dealing with a disability of any kind, but we don't want to create a program, particularly at the federal level, that creates a disincentive for them to then try and transition back into the workforce, even if it's just a partial transition, which it may be, or certainly a full transition. So that's a great issue. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
I know many people in the mental health community that have expressed this concern all the time. They have difficulty, the ones that do work have difficulty balancing that. There are many that would like to work, but again, if they're afraid that if they do, they'll lose the supports that they have, and they don't want to go back to being homeless or to having a psychotic break or whatever the issue was.
Interesting.
So,
sounds like a wonderful
George,
issue.
if George, look me up if you want to talk further.
Okay, I sure will.
I'm willing to, I
Thank
can
you.
connect you with some people that can tell you their stories.
Thank you. Well, thanks for bringing that to my attention.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the last thing before I head out that I'd like to leave the folks who are watching with is as a first-time candidate, the only way that this really works is if people tell other people. Campaigns in this day and age too often, I think, rely simply on money, and money then gets funneled into advertising. And I understand that's the way the system runs. But my belief is that people place much more